The wrench slipped from Owen's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He bent down to pick it up, his back aching from 12 straight hours of work. The repair bay smelled like oil and burned circuits, but he didn't mind. This place was his whole world, tucked away in the forgotten lower levels of the station where most people never bother to visit. Something moved in the corner of his vision. Owen turned his head slowly, not wanting to startle whatever had found its way into his workspace. Rats were common enough on stations this old, though they usually avoided the lower bays where the air recyclers hummed too loud. But this was no rat. A small creature stood near the ventilation grate, no bigger than the cats Owen remembered from Earth. Its body was covered in scales that caught the dim light, shifting between gray and pale blue. For legs, a long tail, and wings folded tight against its sides. The creature's eyes were bright and intelligent, watching him with an expression that seemed almost human in its wariness. Owen stayed very still. He had worked on the station for 5 years and thought he had seen every species that passed through. This one was new. The creature looked fragile somehow, like it had been traveling too long without enough food or rest. Its scales were dull in places, and one wing hung at an odd angle. The creature took a step forward, then stopped. It looked back at the ventilation grate as if considering retreat. Then it looked at Owen again, and something in those eyes made his heart ache. He had seen that look before, in the faces of lost travelers who stumbled into the station hoping for help. Owen slowly lowered himself to sit on the floor, making himself less threatening. "Hey there," he said quietly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's head tilted, considering his words. Then it reached behind itself with careful movements and pulled something forward. A small object, no longer than Owen's hand. The creature carried it in its mouth like a dog with a precious toy, stepping closer with obvious reluctance. When it was within arm's reach, the creature gently placed the object on the floor and pushed it toward Owen with one clawed foot. Then it sat back on its haunches and waited. Owen leaned forward to examine what the creature had brought. It was a miniature ship crafted with incredible detail. Every panel and viewport was perfectly rendered, and there were symbols etched into the hull that Owen didn't recognize. But something was wrong with it. The ship sat crooked, and when Owen carefully picked it up, he could feel broken pieces shifting inside. "Your toy is broken," Owen said, looking at the creature. "You want me to fix it?" The creature made a soft chirping sound and nodded its head. Actually nodded, like it understood every word. Owen felt a smile spread across his face. "All right then, let me see what I can do." He stood slowly, holding the small ship carefully in both hands. The creature followed him to his workbench, staying close but not touching. Owen cleared a space among his tools and set the ship down under his brightest lamp. Up close, he could see the craftsmanship was extraordinary. Whoever had made this understood engineering in ways that seemed almost impossible. The creature hopped up onto a nearby stool, watching every movement Owen made. Its tail wrapped around the stool's leg for balance, and those bright eyes never left the broken toy. Owen pulled out his magnifying lens and examined the ship more closely. The outer hull had a crack running along one side, and when he carefully opened a panel, he found the interior mechanisms were damaged. Small gears had come loose, and something that looked like a tiny gravity generator had been knocked out of alignment. This wasn't just a toy. It was a working model built to actually fly. "This is old," Owen said, more to himself than the creature. "Really old. I've never seen technology quite like this." The creature chirped again, softer this time. Owen glanced over and saw it had moved closer, its head resting on the edge of the workbench. The poor thing looked exhausted. "When's the last time you ate?" Owen asked. He reached into his toolbox and pulled out a protein bar he had been saving for later. Breaking off a piece, he offered it to the creature. "Here, you look hungry." The creature sniffed the food suspiciously, then took it with surprising gentleness. It ate slowly, never taking its eyes off the broken ship. Owen turned back to his work, already planning the repair in his mind. The gravity generator would need to be realigned first, then he could work on the gears. The hull crack would require careful welding with his microtorch. It would take time, maybe hours, but he could do it. He had always been good at fixing broken things. Behind him, he didn't notice the air shimmer slightly, like heat rising for summer pavement. He didn't see the way light bent around an invisible presence, or sense the ancient consciousness that had followed the small creature through the ventilation system. The Dragon Emperor stood in the shadows of the repair bay, watching through eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. The Emperor had expected many things when he tracked his missing grandchild to this human station. He had expected cruelty or greed or the cold calculation of someone recognizing a valuable prize. He had prepared himself to destroy this entire section of the station if necessary, to save the young one. He had not expected this. A human, alone in a forgotten corner of space, offering food and kindness without hesitation. Working on a broken toy with the same care one might give to a priceless artifact. Speaking gently to a creature he didn't recognize, treating it like a friend rather than a curiosity. The Emperor watched as Owen worked, his ancient mind turning over possibilities he had long ago dismissed. Perhaps the stories about humans were incomplete. Perhaps there was more to these death world dwellers than violence and ambition that he would wait and watch. And if this human proved worthy, perhaps it was time for dragons to reconsider their long isolation from the galaxy. 3 hours had passed, and Owen's eyes burned from staring through the magnifying lens. His fingers moved with practiced precision, adjusting microscopic components inside the tiny ship. The creature had fallen asleep on the stool beside him, its breathing soft and steady. Every so often it would make small sounds in its sleep, and its tail would twitch. Owen had started talking to it about an hour ago, explaining what he was doing even though the creature couldn't understand. Or at least, he thought it couldn't. But sometimes when he spoke, one of its ears would flick toward him, like it was listening even in sleep. The problem is that whoever built this used principles I've only seen in theoretical papers, Owen said quietly, carefully realigning a series of crystal arrays inside the ship's core. These crystals should store energy, but they're doing something else too. Like they're holding information, maybe even memories. The creature's eyes opened at that word. It lifted its head and made a questioning sound. Owen looked over at it and smiled. Memories, yeah. See these patterns in the crystal structure? They're not random. Something's been recorded in here. Images maybe or sounds. This isn't just a toy. It's like a photo album that flies. The creature stood up on the stool, suddenly more alert. It leaned forward, staring at the ship with new intensity. Then it made a series of chirping sounds, higher and faster than before, almost like it was trying to tell him something important. I know, Owen said gently. I'm being careful. I won't erase anything, I promise. Every memory in here will stay safe. He meant it too. Owen had learned young that objects could carry meaning far beyond their physical form. His grandmother's watch sat on his workbench every day, even though it hadn't worked in 20 years. He couldn't bring himself to take it apart, even to fix it, because she had worn it every day of her life. Some things were sacred not because of what they were, but because of what they meant to someone. This toy meant something to the creature. That was enough for Owen to treat it like the most valuable item in the galaxy. He turned back to the repair, adjusting the final crystal into place. The gravity generator hummed softly, and Owen felt a smile spread across his face. The core was working again. Now he just needed to reconnect the control systems and fix the hull. The creature watched every movement, occasionally making soft sounds that Owen interpreted as encouragement. When he successfully reattached a particularly tricky component, the creature bobbed its head up and down in what looked like approval. You're a smart one, aren't you? Owen said. I bet you understand way more than you let on. The creature tilted its head, then did something that made Owen's breath catch. It reached out with one small clawed hand and touched the watch on his workbench. Then it looked at Owen and made a soft, sad sound. Owen felt his throat tighten. Yeah, he said quietly. That belonged to someone important. She's gone now, but having this here makes me feel like she's still watching over me. Makes the work feel less lonely. The creature nodded slowly, then turned its attention back to its own broken treasure. It touched the ship gently with one claw, the gesture full of the same kind of longing Owen felt when he looked at the watch. Lost someone, didn't you? Owen asked softly. And this toy reminds you of him. The creature's eyes glistened, and Owen realized with shock that it was crying, actual tears running down its scaled face. Without thinking, he reached out and gently stroked the creature's head, the same way he used to pet his neighbor's cat back on Earth. The creature leaned into his touch, making a sound that was half chirp, half sob. Owen kept his hand there, offering what comfort he could, while his other hand continued working on the ship. If this toy was all the creature had left of someone it loved, then Owen would move mountains to fix it properly in the shadows. The Dragon Emperor felt something he had not experienced in centuries. His eyes, which had witnessed the death of stars and the birth of worlds, grew wet with unshed tears. This human understood. Without knowing who or what the young dragon was, without understanding the significance of the toy, he understood the only thing that mattered. He understood loss and love and the desperate need to hold on to memories of those who had gone. The Emperor had lost his own mate 300 years ago. The toy the young dragon carried had been crafted by her, a gift for their grandchild before sickness took her. Every dragon in their clan knew the significance of that small ship, but none had been able to repair it when it broke. The technology was too old, the craftsmanship too specific to his mate's unique skills. Yet here was a human, working with tools that should have been inadequate, guided by nothing more than empathy and determination. And somehow, impossibly, he was succeeding where dragon craftsmen had failed. The Emperor made a decision then. When this repair was complete, he would reveal himself, not as a threat, but as a father and grandfather grateful for kindness shown to his family. Whatever came after would depend on this human's reaction, but the Emperor suspected Owen would surprise him again. Humans, he was learning, were full of surprises. Owen worked through the night, taking breaks only to share more food with the creature and to stretch his aching back. The creature stayed awake now, watching with intense focus as the ship slowly came back together under Owen's careful hands. The hull crack was sealed, the gears properly aligned, and the control systems reconnected as dawn approached by station time. Owen made the final adjustment. The ship's lights flickered once, twice, then glowed steady and bright. It lifted gently from the workbench, hovering perfectly stable in the air. The creature made a sound of pure joy. The hovering ship began to move, gliding through the air in smooth circles around the repair bay. The creature leaped off the stool and chased after it, wings spreading wide despite the injured one. For the first time since arriving, it looked genuinely happy. It jumped and spun, following the toy with pure delight in every movement. Owen leaned back in his chair and watched, exhaustion forgotten in the face of such joy. His work had been worth it just to see this moment. The creature played like a child, all fear and sadness temporarily pushed aside by the simple pleasure of a favorite toy restored. But something else was happening too. The ship began projecting light, creating images in the air around it. Owen sat forward, fascinated, as scenes appeared like holograms throughout his workshop. Mountains made of crystal that caught sunlight and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Oceans that glowed with bioluminescence, lighting up shores of black sand. And creatures, dozens of them, flying through skies painted in colors Earth had never known. The creatures in the projections looked like the one in his workshop, but larger. Much larger. Adults, Owen realized, with scales that shimmered like precious metals and jewels. They flew in formations, their wings catching wind currents with practiced grace. Some breathed fire that burned in shades of blue and green and silver. Others seemed to command lightning or bend water to their will. Dragons, Owen whispered. The word came from Earth legends, from stories told to children about magical beasts that hoarded treasure and battle heroes. But these were real. They had always been real, just hidden away in corners of the galaxy where humans had never thought to look. The small dragon, because that's what it was, landed beside Owen's chair. It looked up at him with those intelligent eyes, and Owen saw the question there. Now you know what I am. Are you afraid? Owen reached down and gently scratched behind the dragon's ears, the same way he had been doing all night. I don't care what you are, he said simply. You needed help, and I helped. That's all that matters. The dragon closed its eyes and leaned into his touch, making a sound like a cat's purr, but deeper, resonating in Owen's chest. Trust, that sound said. Complete and absolute trust. The projections continued, showing more scenes from dragon worlds. Families flying together, young dragons learning to control their fire, elders teaching history by projecting their own memories into the air. And there, in one projection, Owen saw something that made his heart clench. An older dragon, scales white as snow, carefully crafting the small ship while a younger version of his visitor watched with eager eyes. "That's who made your toy," Owen said softly. "Someone who loved you very much." The young dragon nodded, tears falling again. It touched the projection with one claw, trying to reach through the image to the memory beyond. The gesture was heartbreaking in its futility. Owen's station radio crackled suddenly, making them both jump. A rough voice came through, speaking in the pidgin language used by travelers across this sector. "Attention repair station. We are boarding for routine inspection. Prepare for customs check." Owen's blood went cold. There was nothing routine about this. The station had been inspected 2 weeks ago. Someone was looking for something, and given the timing, Owen had a terrible suspicion about what that something might be. He looked down at the young dragon, who had gone completely still. Its eyes were wide with fear, and it was shaking. This had happened before, Owen realized. Someone had chased this dragon, hunted it, tried to capture it. That's how it had gotten lost and injured. "Listen to me," Owen said urgently, keeping his voice calm despite his racing heart. "I need you to hide. Right now. Can you turn off your toy?" The dragon chirped once, and the ship immediately stopped projecting and landed in Owen's hand. He quickly wrapped it in a soft cloth and tucked it into his toolbox. Then he picked up the dragon, feeling how light it was, how fragile despite those scales and claws. "There's a shielded compartment under my workbench," Owen said, carrying the dragon across the room. "I use it to protect sensitive equipment from electromagnetic interference. It should hide your heat signature too. Get in there and don't make a sound, no matter what you hear. I'll get rid of them." The dragon looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. It made a questioning sound, clearly asking why Owen would risk himself for a stranger. "Because you're not a stranger anymore," Owen said simply. "You're my friend, and I don't let anyone hurt my friends." He opened the compartment, a space barely big enough for the small dragon to curl up inside. The dragon hesitated for just a moment, then touched its nose to Owen's hand in a gesture of gratitude before climbing inside. Owen closed the panel and made sure it was properly sealed and locked. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, heavy boots on metal decking. Owen took a deep breath, wiped his sweaty palms on his work pants, and turned to face his workbench. He picked up a random piece of machinery and a welding torch, tried to look busy and unconcerned. The bay door opened with a hiss of hydraulics. 3 figures entered, all wearing mismatched armor that spoke of mercenary work rather than official business. The leader was a Krovan, a species known for their tracking abilities and their lack of moral scruples. The other 2 were human, which somehow made Owen angrier. His own species, hunting a helpless creature for profit. "Working late?" the Krovan said, its voice like gravel scraping against metal. "Or early? Hard to tell in space. Lot of work to do," Owen replied, keeping his tone neutral. "Can I help you with something?" The Krovan's eyes scanned the workshop, lingering on the tools, the parts scattered across surfaces, the various equipment Owen used in his daily work. "We are looking for something valuable. Small creature, reptilian features. You see anything like that?" Owen shook his head. "Just me down here. Don't get many visitors in the lower bays. Most people think the walk isn't worth it." One of the humans stepped forward, hand resting on the weapon at his belt. "We have scanners that detected unusual life signs in this section. Very unusual. Worth a lot of money to the right buyers." "Life signs?" Owen gestured around the bay. "You're in the middle of a space station with thousands of residents. Probably picking up rats in the ventilation system. They're everywhere down here." The Krovan moved closer, and Owen forced himself not to step back. The creature was taller than him by a foot, with muscles built for violence and eyes that had seen too much death. "Maybe we should search. Make sure you're not hiding anything." This was the moment. Owen could let them search, hope they didn't find the dragon, or he could refuse and face whatever consequences came. He thought about the trust in those young dragon eyes, about the joy on its face when the toy flew again, about the way it had touched his grandmother's watch with such understanding. No, Owen said firmly. You can't search my workspace without proper authorization. Station Law, Section 47. This bay is private property, and you're trespassing. The human mercenaries exchanged glances, clearly surprised by his resistance. The Krovan leaned in closer, trying to intimidate. You want to die for station law. Owen met its eyes without flinching. I want you to leave my workshop. Now, before I report this harassment to station security. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the Krovan smiled, showing too many teeth. We will be watching you, human. If you are hiding something, we will find out. They left, but Owen knew they would be back. He had just made himself a target, and he had no idea how to protect himself or the dragon for what was coming. Owen waited until the footsteps faded completely before releasing the breath he had been holding. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline making his fingers tremble as he moved to unlock the compartment. The young dragon emerged slowly, looking up at him with something like awe. They're gone for now, Owen said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But they'll be watching the bay. We need to figure out how to get you home safely. The dragon chirped softly and pressed against Owen's leg. It understood the danger he had just put himself in, understood that he had chosen protection over safety. The gesture made Owen's chest tight with emotion he couldn't quite name. He sat down on the floor, suddenly exhausted. The dragon climbed into his lap, curling up like it belonged there. Owen stroked its scales absently, his mind racing through possibilities. He could try to sneak the dragon off the station, but the Krovan scanners would detect it. He could call station security, but that would mean revealing what he was protecting, and word would spread. Dragons were legend, myth made real. Every treasure hunter and collector in the sector would descend on this station. I don't suppose you can tell me where your family is? Owen asked quietly. The dragon looked up at him and made a series of sounds, frustrated and sad. It wanted to communicate, but the gap between their species was too wide. Or was it? Owen thought about the projections from the toy, about the way the dragon seemed to understand everything he said, even if it couldn't respond in human words that in the shadows beyond Owen's sight. The Dragon Emperor wrestled with his own decision. He had watched the mercenaries threaten this human, had watched Owen stand firm despite obvious fear. The Emperor could have intervened, could have revealed himself, and eliminated the threat with a thought. Dragon fire could turn these petty hunters to ash before they knew what was happening. But he had held back, curious to see what Owen would do. And the human had exceeded every expectation. He had lied without hesitation, had faced down armed mercenaries, had refused to betray the trust of a creature he barely knew. This was not the behavior of a death world predator acting on instinct. This was choice, conscious and moral, made with full awareness of the cost. The Emperor had seen enough. He allowed his presence to become visible, letting light bend around his form until he stood revealed in the corner of the workshop. He kept his size manageable, not wanting to destroy Owen's workspace, but even reduced he was massive. His scales were black as the void between stars, traced with lines of silver that pulsed with ancient power. His eyes held galaxies, civilizations rising and falling in their depths. Owen scrambled backward, the young dragon tumbling from his lap. For a moment, there was only shock, the absolute terror of a human confronting something beyond comprehension. Then Owen's eyes found the young dragon, saw how it ran to the Emperor with joyful chirps, saw how the massive creature lowered its head to nuzzle the small one with infinite gentleness. Your family, Owen said, his voice barely a whisper. You're the one it's been trying to get back to. The Emperor's voice, when he spoke, resonated in Owen's bones. It was sound and thought and feeling all combined, bypassing ears to speak directly to understanding. I am grandfather to the young one. I am emperor of the hidden clans. And I have watched everything you have done this night. Owen should have been terrified. He was terrified, but underneath the fear was something else, a strange calm that came from knowing he had made the right choices. The toy, he said, did I fix it properly? I try to preserve all the memories in the crystals. The Emperor's laugh was like distant thunder, warm and surprised. Here I stand, ancient beyond your reckoning, and your first concern is the quality of your work? You are an unusual human, Owen of Earth. You know my name, Owen said, still processing the fact that he was having a conversation with what amounted to a living god from legend. I know many things. I have watched your kind from afar for longer than your civilization has existed. We dragons withdrew from the galaxy millennia ago, tired of being hunted for our scales, our fire, our blood. We trusted other species once, and they betrayed that trust for profit. So we hid, and we watched, and we waited. The young dragon chirped urgently, tugging at the Emperor's leg. The Emperor nodded, a gesture that transcended species. Yes, small one. I know. This human is different. Different how? Owen asked, finding his courage slowly returning. If the Emperor wanted him dead, he would already be dead. The fact that they were talking meant something. You saw my grandchild not as a prize to be captured, but as a person to be helped. You repaired a broken toy with the same care you would show to sacred treasure. You faced danger rather than betray trust freely given. These are not the actions we have come to expect from the younger species of this galaxy. Owen thought about that. Maybe you've been watching the wrong humans. The Emperor's eyes, vast and deep, focused on Owen with new intensity. Perhaps, or perhaps we've been waiting for the right moment, the right bridge between our kinds. Tell me, Owen of Earth, what would you do if I offered you a choice? What kind of choice? My grandchild escaped our hidden worlds out of youthful curiosity. The toy broke during the journey, and the young one became lost trying to find help. You were the first being to show kindness rather than greed. For that, you have earned a reward. I could offer you treasure beyond imagining, technology that would make you rich beyond measure, knowledge that would advance your species 1,000 years in a single generation. Name your price for the service you have rendered. Owen looked down at the young dragon, who was watching him with those trusting eyes. He thought about his grandmother's watch, about the protein bar shared without hesitation, about the simple joy of fixing something broken and making someone happy. I don't want payment, Owen said finally. The little one needed help. That's all that mattered. Seeing it happy when the toy flew again, that was worth more than any treasure. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, tinged with something that might have been emotion. You continue to surprise me. Very well, but the offer I make now is not payment. It is invitation. Would you come with us, Owen of Earth? Would you see the worlds my people have hidden for so long? Would you meet the clans and learn our ways? Why would you invite me? Owen asked, genuinely confused. I'm just a mechanic. You are more than you know. You are the first being in 3,000 years to earn the trust of a dragon without seeking to exploit it. You are the first to see my grandchild as a person rather than a prize. If one human can do this, perhaps others can as well. Perhaps it is time for dragons to rejoin the galaxy, and perhaps your kind could be the allies we have been seeking. Owen's mind reeled at the implications. First contact with a species thought to be myth. The chance to see worlds no human had ever witnessed, but also the responsibility of representing his entire species, the weight of decisions that could reshape the galaxy. Can I think about it? Owen asked. The young dragon made a pleading sound, looking up at Owen with hopeful eyes. The Emperor nodded slowly. You may have time to consider, but know this, Owen of Earth. Those hunters will return, and next time they will bring better scanners. More weapons. You have made yourself a target by protecting my grandchild. If you come with us, you will be safe. If you stay, you will face consequences for your kindness. Owen looked around his workshop, at the tools he had collected over years, at his grandmother's watch sitting on the workbench, at the life he had built in this forgotten corner of space. Then he looked at the young dragon, remembering its fear and its trust, remembering the joy when the toy flew again. Sometimes choices made themselves. Owen grabbed his grandmother's watch from the workbench and slipped it into his pocket. I'll come with you, he said, but not just because of the hunters. I want to see your worlds. I want to understand. The Emperor's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile, though on a dragon's face it was hard to tell. Then we must leave quickly, before those mercenaries organize a larger search. Come, place your hand upon my grandson. The journey will be strange for you, but I will ensure your safety. Owen knelt beside the young dragon, who chirped excitedly and pressed against him. The moment Owen's hand touched its scales, the world dissolved. There was no other word for it. The repair bay, the station, the familiar walls of metal and wire, all of it simply stopped being solid. Owen felt like he was falling and flying at the same time, moving through space in a way that made no physical sense. Colors he had no names for streaked past, and sounds that weren't quite sounds echoed in his mind. Through it all, he felt the young dragon's presence, steady and warm, anchoring him to something real. Then, just as suddenly, the world became solid again. Owen stumbled, catching himself on what felt like stone. His eyes struggled to adjust, and when they did, he forgot how to breathe. He stood on a platform of crystal that jutted out from a cliff face. Below him, a valley stretched for miles, filled with structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being built upon it. Towers of stone spiraled toward a sky, painted in shades of purple and gold. Water flowed upward in some places, defying gravity to create floating rivers that sparkled in light from two suns. And everywhere there were dragons. They flew in the air, dozens of them, hundreds maybe. They perched on the crystal towers and walked along bridges made of solidified light. They came in every color Owen could imagine, and some he couldn't. Some were small like his companion. Others were massive, larger than the transport ships Owen had serviced on the station. They moved with grace and power, completely at home in this impossible place. "Welcome," the Emperor said, his form expanding now that there was room, growing until he blocked out one of the suns, "to the oldest of our hidden sanctuaries. Welcome to Dragon's Heart, built before your species learned to make fire." Owen couldn't speak. Words felt inadequate for what he was seeing. The young dragon tugged at his pant leg, eager to show him everything at once. It pulled him toward a path that led down into the valley, and Owen followed on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. Other dragons noticed their arrival. They gathered along the path, watching with eyes that held curiosity and something else. Suspicion, Owen realized. They knew what he was. They knew a human walked among them, and they remembered why dragons had left the galaxy behind. Point one dragon, scales like burnished copper and eyes like molten gold, landed directly in Owen's path. It was larger than the Emperor's grandchild, but smaller than the Emperor himself, and it radiated hostility like heat from furnace. "You bring a human here," it said, its voice sharp with disbelief. "Have you forgotten what they did to the colonies on Ferris Prime? Have you forgotten the hunting fleets?" The Emperor moved between Owen and the angry dragon with surprising speed. "I forget nothing, Brennan, but neither do I let the past blind me to new possibilities. This human protected my grandchild at risk to himself. This human repaired the ship that none of our craftsmen could fix. This human refused treasure and asked for nothing in return." Brennan's eyes narrowed. One decent human does not erase centuries of betrayal. "No," Owen said, finding his voice at last. "It doesn't, and I can't speak for what other humans have done. I can only speak for myself. I helped because someone needed help. That's all." Brennan stared at him for a long moment, then snorted, smoke curling from its nostrils. "We shall see, human. We shall see if your actions match your words." It launched itself into the air, powerful wings carrying it away, but Owen could feel its gaze tracking him from above. The young dragon pressed closer to Owen, offering comfort. The Emperor's voice was gentle when he spoke again. "Many of my people have lost loved ones to hunters and collectors. Their anger is not personal to you, but you represent a species that has caused great pain. Earning their trust will not be easy." "I'm not here to earn anything," Owen said quietly. "I'm here because a small dragon asked me to fix its toy, and I made a friend. If other dragons can't accept that, I understand." The Emperor made a sound that was almost like approval. "Kulme, there are those who wish to meet you. Those who remember that not all younger species are the same. They walked deeper into the valley, and Owen saw more wonders with every step. Gardens where plants grew in geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long, their leaves catching light and transforming it into music. Pools of water that showed reflections of places that weren't there, windows to other worlds. Dragons of all ages gathered in clearings, some teaching young ones to fly, others engaged in what looked like philosophical debates that involved projecting their thoughts into the air as visible light. The young dragon led Owen to a large building that seemed to be carved from a single piece of amber. Inside, the walls glowed softly, and the air smelled of something sweet and ancient. A group of elder dragons waited there, their scales dulled by age, but their eyes bright with intelligence. "The council wishes to speak with you," the emperor said. "They will decide if you may remain among us, or if you must return to your own kind with your memory of this place locked away." Owen swallowed hard. "And if they decide I can't be trusted, then you will wake on your station with no memory of dragons being real. You will believe the young one was merely a dream brought on by exhaustion. Your life will continue as it was." "That seems fair," Owen said, though the thought of forgetting the young dragon made his heart ache. They had shared something real, something meaningful. To have that erased felt like a small death. The young dragon chirped urgently, then ran to the Council of Elders. It made a series of sounds, complex and emotional, clearly arguing on Owen's behalf. The elders listened with patience, occasionally making sounds of their own that seemed like questions. Finally, one of the elders, a dragon with scales like weathered stone and eyes that held more years than Owen could fathom, spoke in the resonant voice all dragons seemed to share. "The young one tells us you cried while repairing the ship. Is this true?" Owen blinked, surprised by the question. "I don't remember crying." "You did," the elder said, "when you saw the memories stored in the crystals. When you realized the ship was crafted by someone who had passed beyond. You shed tears for a loss that was not your own." "Why?" Owen thought about his answer carefully. "Because loss is universal. It doesn't matter what species you are. When you love someone and they're gone, it hurts." I could see how much the toy meant to the little one. I could see the love that went into making it. That kind of thing transcends language or form. It's just love. And when love is gone, it leaves a hole that never quite fills. The elders were silent for a long time. Then, slowly, they nodded to each other, some unspoken agreement passing between them. "You may stay," the eldest said finally. "Not as a guest, but as one who sees. You will learn our ways. You will meet our people. And when the time comes, you will return to your kind and speak truth about what you have witnessed here. Dragons cannot hide forever. Perhaps it is time to find allies rather than remain isolated. Perhaps humans like you are the bridge we have been waiting for." The young dragon launched itself at Owen, nearly knocking him over in its enthusiasm. Owen caught it, laughing despite the weight of what had just happened. He had just been made an ambassador without being asked, given a responsibility that could change the course of human-dragon relations for generations. But when he looked into the young dragon's happy eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. 6 weeks passed in the dragon's heart, and Owen learned more than he thought possible. The young dragon, whose name translated roughly to Skyfire in human language, became his constant companion and teacher. Through gestures, projected images, and patient repetition, Skyfire taught Owen about dragon culture, their history, their technology, and their fears. Dragons were not immortal, though they lived far longer than humans. They could be killed, their eggs destroyed, their young stolen. 3,000 years ago, they had tried to live openly among the galactic community. They had shared their technology, their art, their philosophy. In return, they had been hunted nearly to extinction by species who saw them only as resources to be harvested. They had withdrawn, using ancient technology to hide their world from scanners and sensors. They had raised barriers between themselves and the rest of the galaxy. They had survived by becoming myth, legend, safely tucked away in children's stories where real hunters couldn't reach them. But isolation had its own cost. Dragon culture had stagnated. Without new ideas, new perspectives, their society had become rigid and backward-looking. The young ones like Skyfire grew restless, dreaming of stars they would never see. Owen understood that restlessness. He had felt it himself growing up on overcrowded Earth, staring at the sky and dreaming of space. That shared yearning created a bond deeper than species. He met hundreds of dragons during his stay. Some, like Brennan, remained suspicious and cold. Others opened to him slowly, testing his sincerity with questions and challenges. A few, mainly the younger dragons, embraced him with enthusiasm, fascinated by stories of human worlds and culture. Owen told them everything. About Earth's struggles with overpopulation and resources. About humanity's drive to explore, to push boundaries, to never accept limits. About the darkness in human history, the wars and genocides and terrible choices. He didn't try to paint his species as perfect. That would have been a lie, and dragons could sense lies like humans could sense smoke. We're flawed, Owen said one evening, sitting with a group of young dragons around a fire that burned without fuel. We make mistakes. We hurt each other, but we also protect each other. We build and create. We reach out even when we're afraid. Maybe that's what you need. Not a perfect species to ally with, but one that understands failure and keeps trying anyway. One of the young dragons, scales like twilight sky, spoke up. Your species comes from a death world. You evolved surrounded by danger. Why would we trust those instincts? Because those instincts made us survivors, not just predators, Owen replied. Yes, Earth is harsh. Everything that wants to kill you. But humans learned to cooperate, to protect the weak, to share resources. We had to, or we would have gone extinct. The same instincts that helped us survive on Earth make us good at protecting others. The Emperor, who often sat in on these discussions, made a sound of agreement. I have watched your species for centuries, Owen of Earth. I have seen your wars, yes, but I have also seen your hospitals, your schools, your art and music. I have seen humans die, protecting strangers. I've seen them work together to solve impossible problems. You're not perfect, but you're not hopeless either. As the weeks passed, Owen worked with dragon craftsmen, sharing human engineering techniques and learning dragon principles in return. He found that both species approached problems differently, and the combination of perspectives led to insights neither could have achieved alone. They developed new alloys, improved energy systems, and created devices that bridged the gap between dragon magic and human science. Magic, Owen learned, wasn't supernatural. It was just technology, so advanced it seemed like magic to less developed species. Dragons had mastered quantum manipulation, dimensional folding, and energy states that human physics barely theorized about. But they had stagnated in practical applications, focused on preservation rather than innovation. Humans, in contrast, were constantly innovating, constantly pushing boundaries, even when they shouldn't. It made them dangerous, but also made them valuable as partners. The time came, as Owen knew it would, when he had to leave. The council called him before them one final time, and the elders looked at him with expressions he had learned to read, as respect. You have lived among us, the eldest said. You have learned our ways and taught us yours. You have proven that at least one human can be trusted with our secrets. Now comes the hard part. You must return to your people and be our voice. Owen nodded, his throat tight. Saying goodbye to Skyfire would be one of the hardest things he had ever done. The young dragon had become like family. We are not asking you to reveal our location, the Emperor said. We're not ready for the entire galaxy to know where we hide. But we want humanity to know we exist. We want to open a dialogue. And if your people prove worthy, if they show the same respect you have shown, then perhaps we can build towards something greater. What if they don't? Owen asked. What if they react with fear or greed? Then we will remain hidden, and you will have tried. We ask no more than that. The Emperor gave Owen a gift before he left. A small communication device, disguised as a decorative pin, that would let him contact the dragon worlds if needed. Use this wisely, the Emperor said. Use it only when the time is right. You will know when that is. Skyfire gave him the repaired toy ship, pressing it into his hands with obvious reluctance. So you remember, the young dragon said in halting human words it had been practicing for weeks. So you not forget, friend? Owen hugged the dragon, not caring that its scales were hard and sharp against his skin. I could never forget you. You changed my entire life. The journey back was easier than the journey there, or maybe Owen was just getting used to impossible things. He materialized in his workshop exactly as he had left it, though weeks had passed in the Dragon Realm. Time moved differently there, the Emperor had explained. Only hours had passed on the station. The workshop felt empty and quiet after the vibrant chaos of Dragon's Heart. Owen stood in the silence, holding the tiny ship, and felt the weight of what he had been asked to do. How did you tell humanity that dragons were real? How did you convince them to approach with respect rather than greed? He sat at his workbench and placed the toy ship carefully beside his grandmother's watch. Two precious objects, both representing connections that transcended normal bounds. Both reminding him that the impossible was just the possible that hadn't happened yet. Owen powered up his terminal and began to write. Not a formal report, not a scientific paper, but a story. The story of a lonely mechanic who fixed a broken toy and found a friend. The story of kindness rewarded with trust. The story of a bridge between species built on the simple act of caring. He didn't know if anyone would believe him. He didn't know if Earth's governments would respond with wonder or suspicion. But he knew he had to try. For Skyfire, for the Emperor, for all the dragons who had dared to hope that isolation might finally end. And somewhere, in a realm hidden from sensors and scanners, a young dragon watched through the connection, still linking them. Skyfire could feel Owen's determination, his hope, his love. And the young dragon knew, with the certainty that only children possess, that everything would work out, because that's what friends did. They tried. They hoped. They reached across impossible divides and built bridges one small act of kindness at a time. Owen finished writing as the station's artificial dawn began to brighten his workshop. He read over what he had written, made a few corrections, and then sent it out into the network. Not to governments or officials, but to everyone. A story shared freely, an invitation to wonder, a challenge to humanity to be worthy of the trust one mechanic had been given. The toy ship on his workbench began to glow softly, and Owen smiled. Skyfire was saying good night across the distance between worlds. Owen touched the ship gently and whispered, "Good night, friend. Thank you for trusting me." In the end, that's what all came down to. Trust. Given freely, earned through action, maintained through respect. If humanity could learn that lesson, if they could approach dragons the way Owen had approached Skyfire, then maybe the galaxy had hope after all. Maybe bridges could be built. Maybe ancient wounds could heal. Maybe friendship really was stronger than fear. Owen believed it was. And sometimes belief was enough to change everything.